So there's a specific kind of watch that I've been looking for a while. I've really been hoping that a micro brand or something would come out with this design, that they would make it, that it would be available for a reasonable price. But I haven't seen anybody do it. And so that's why when Namoki Mods contacted me and asked if I was interested in any mod projects and they were willing to supply some parts for to make a video, I was interested. Because with their catalog of parts, I was able to go through and piece together pretty much exactly what I was looking for. And today I'm going to show you how I built it and show you how it all turned out. So let's check it out. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch. My name's Dave. I live in Japan and I love to collect affordable watches. And if you recently saw my State of the Collection video, towards the end of that video, you probably caught a glimpse of this watch that I built using parts from Namoki Mods. Now, when it comes to watches, there's certain features that I always look for in a daily wear watch. I'd love to have a date complication on a watch. I love to have the ability to time things. And I love to have the ability to track a second time zone because I live in Japan. Most of my family and friends live back in California. So I always like to have that quick reminder of what time it is back home in case I need to contact someone there. And it's actually kind of hard to find a watch that has all of those features for an affordable price. Typically with tracking second time zones, you're going to need a GMT movement, or if you want to time things, a lot of times you'd be looking at a chronograph movement. But a while back, I saw a review of a watch from Fortis, which was just a very simple, clean, classic Flieger watch. It had your kind of type A Flieger layout with 12-hour markings on the dial, and then a 12-hour bezel. Super simple, super clean, and yet with that 12-hour bezel and with a date on the dial, you actually could use it to get all of those features that I wanted. And so I was really looking for another similarly styled, more affordable watch because the watch from Fortis is over $2,000. I would love to see something similar for under $500, but I just couldn't find it. And so when Namoki Mods contacted me, I checked out their catalog. They had just a huge supply of different parts available. And I thought maybe I can build that watch myself or something that gives me the equivalent feature set. Maybe not going to look exactly like it. Now, this video is sponsored by Namoki Mods. They provided all of the parts that I needed for this build. However, other than the parts themselves, they didn't provide any other compensation for this video, nor did they have any input into the content of this. So I'm going to be going over the design of the watch that I set out to build. I'll go a brief overview of the build itself, and I'll talk about the overall quality of the watch that I built and the parts that went into making it. So Namoki Mods pretty much gave me free reign to go on their site and put together a parts list, and that was a lot of fun because they have a ton of different options available. Like a lot of mod parts store, they really service to kind of the Seiko side of things, so everything is kind of Seiko compatible. A lot of stuff is going to be based off of either the SKX 007 or the SKX 013, which is the smaller size, and that's actually the platform that I went with. I wanted to put together kind of a smaller watch, something a little bit slimmer, kind of a travel watch. And they actually had a kit for a Spork pilot watch that I really liked the look of. So I kind of used that as sort of the base. But again, I wanted to add a 12-hour bezel to this. So I was going to make some changes to that. But as far as the dial and the handset and the movement, and again, going with that SKX 013 size for the platform to build this on, I sort of started with that and then started making some substitutions. Obviously, I needed a case that had a bezel on it because that was one of the main components of this build. And I also wanted to keep things as slim as possible. So I wound up going with their 924 case, which I thought was a pretty good balance. And then to make things a little bit interesting, I went ahead and went with a black PVD bezel and then a black PVD crown to kind of give a little bit of a contrasting look there. I'd seen that done on some Seiko watches. I thought it'd be fun to try out, so I want to see how that would turn out. And a major part of this build is the 12-hour bezel. They had the stainless steel 12-hour bezel that had kind of a 15-minute markings on the first 15 minutes. So I really like that because you can kind of use this dual purpose as a timing bezel or as a dual time bezel, so that was great. The total cost for all of the parts that I ordered from them individually came to about $386. They do have some bundles and coupon codes you can get if you're ordering all this together to knock that down, or if you have some of the own parts yourself, maybe you have another watch that you want to use as a starting point, you already have a movement, you might already have a case and you wanted to change and customize some things, you can knock the price of a build like this down. But this is for a complete build, for absolutely everything that you need, at least all of the parts, to assemble one complete custom watch. And I thought that was pretty reasonable for this. All of the parts arrived safely in the mail, all packaged very nicely, and I was able to start unpacking everything and take a look at what we had. This is the first time I was doing a build like this from start to finish where I was assembling everything. Previously, I had done a DIY watch club build before, and they kind of hold your hands through that. I was able to use a lot of the tools that I had from that kit, but I did have to buy some other ones. The big difference here is that I was going to have to seat my own crystal, so this is the first time doing a crystal press on my own. The one other new skill I would have to acquire for this is cutting the crown stem. I'd never done that before, but other than those two things, I felt pretty comfortable with the rest of the building process. Now, I will say the crystal press was, for me, probably the hardest part of this. I'd never done it before, and I'm still not 100% sure I have it seated in there correctly. I keep looking at it and I feel like it's just slightly off balance, like it's tilted a little bit to one side, but I can't tell if that's my imagination. It's very slight if it is. Everything seems to be holding together okay, but yeah, that's something that going forward, I'll probably spend some more time trying to figure out how to do that properly and get it really seated in better. I might look at getting a better crystal press. I pretty much got one of the cheapest ones you can get on Amazon. I think I spent about 15 bucks on it. And I'd also never installed a bezel before. I wound up using the press for that as well. It kind of just popped on there pretty easily. It wasn't too bad. Initially, I installed the 120 click spring that I had purchased, but I wanted this to be a bidirectional bezel. So I wound up just taking that out and leaving it as kind of a smooth turning friction fit, and it actually has enough friction so that it stays in place pretty well like that. I wound up being pretty happy with the action without the click spring in there, so that allows me to spin the bezel freely in either direction, but it does have, again, just a good amount of resistance there. Feels pretty good. That also meant that I didn't have to be as careful about lining up the bezel insert itself, because since it's going to be a smooth turning bezel insert, it'll always line up however I set it. Another area that I always have a little bit of trouble with is setting the hands, and the second hand in particular always takes me a long time to get that in there, especially with the little hand tool that I have for hand setting. And I did wind up damaging the second hand slightly because I was using metal tweezers. I definitely recommend getting a pair of plastic ones if you're going to be handling the handset with that. I kind of chipped some of the loom paint off. It's not visible during the daylight, but now at night you can kind of see there's an area where the loom had been chipped off a bit, and it's a little bit dimmer on one part of that fully loomed second hand than on the rest of it. Sizing the crown stem turned out to be easier than I thought. I had a nice heavy duty pair of wire cutters that I purchased for that particular step, and it made it very easy to do. Throughout all of these steps, I was referring to a lot of different videos online. Loomshot in particular has in the past put out some very helpful videos about modding and assembling and doing these various steps, so I referred to those a lot. I think overall it wound up probably taking me about an hour or so to assemble everything, which wasn't too bad. And once everything was all put together, I was very happy with the end result. The quality of the parts that Namoki sent over were all excellent. I feel like they're easily on par with the parts that I've seen in different micro brands that I've reviewed in the, $300 to $500 price point, and definitely a significant step up in quality versus what I've seen from a lot of AliExpress brands that sell watches in the sub $200 price. This would have cost me, again, around $385 in parts, and judging the watch based on the quality of the parts in this build, I would say that's probably a pretty fair price for the watch that I wound up with. But this one has the added benefit of being exactly customized to my specifications, to exactly the kind of watch that I wanted, the size of the watch that I wanted, the style. So in some ways, it's kind of going down the micro brand rabbit hole even further. If you're getting a micro brand watch, you're going to get a watch that not many people in the world will also own. It'll be something that's unique, something that'll be a little bit more tailored to your own sensibilities most of the time. In this case, if you're going the modding route, you're getting a one-of-one watch that you built yourself. yourself, and you're probably the only one in the world who has that specific combination of parts on your wrist. Now, like I said, overall, I'm pretty happy with the way the watch turned out. I'm not like 100% sold on everything. There were a few things that I learned from this that maybe I would tweak or do differently, or maybe I might change in the future. I think the stainless steel bezel insert in the black PVD bezel looks okay, but probably maybe a black bezel insert would have been better. I think a black bezel and a black bezel insert would have given it a cleaner look, but I do really like the black PVD bezel and black PVD crown along with the stainless steel case. I really like the dial here, and I think that 12, 3, 6, and 9 pilot style dial along with a 12-hour bezel does really make the bezel easier to use. Now, after having everything assembled, I do think that the watch appears a little bit small for my wrist. A 38mm watch is something that I have worn before, but not with a bezel, and that really does make the watch look smaller when you get a 38mm watch with a bezel on there. So maybe I should have gone with the XKX 007 platform instead of the 013, but this is very comfortable, and even though it is a little bit on the smaller side, I don't think it looks too small. I had also hoped to be able to get this watch to be slimmer, but that's actually more of a challenge than I think I realized. Namoki helped me pick out the slimmest parts that I could find with the case, with a slim case back, and then with a low profile bezel. Even with all of that, it still wound up being just a hair over 13mm thick. Now, that is for a case that's rated for, I believe, 200 meters of water resistance, which, it's not an unreasonable thickness for a case that size at all. Of course, that water resistance is going to be dependent on me properly sealing and seating everything and installing all the gaskets, so I'm a little nervous about that aspect of it. I'm probably not going to be taking this one diving or anything like that. Now, as far as loom performance goes on the hands that Namoki sent over, they were, okay for something like a pilot's watch or a field's watch. These were not dive watch hands, and they weren't performing as well as I would typically like to see on a dive watch. Likewise, the dial wasn't particularly bright, but that's kind of to be expected with a painted dial like this. Running it through my J-Score testing system, this one came out with a score of 4. And for reference, a 5 is typically about average, and a 10 is normally what an entry-level Seiko dive watch will score. Given that Namoki creates a lot of parts for Seiko mods, I would hope that the dive style hands that they make are a little bit closer to the level of power that Seiko puts out. So maybe in the future, I'll get some of those in to test for another build and we can see how they go. As it is, again, with these sort of pilot style hands and pilot dial, you're getting an average level of loom. It's very usable. It looks pretty bright for the initial glow, but it's not going to last you particularly long. Overall, it's just okay. But again, overall, I'm very happy with the way that everything turned out. I really like this watch. And I think learning how to do a mod project like this, learning how to install a movement or to change a handset or to install a crown, and learning how to install a new crystal in your watch, those are all really, really important skills to know if you're doing a budget watch collection. If you're able to do those kinds of repairs on your own, you're going to save so much money versus having to take in your watch to a watchmaker to get a crystal replaced or to get a movement swapped out or to get a service. For basically any of those jobs, it's going to be cheaper to buy the parts and the tools than it would be to take it to a watchmaker and have them do it for you. And once you have the tools, every subsequent time you're going to have to perform that maintenance, you're just going to be saving more money. Plus, once you start modding, there's just so many possibilities that it opens up with being able to customize your watch and really get something that's exactly what you want, rather than hoping that somebody else will build exactly what you want. All right, guys, so that was my build from Namoki Mods. Let me know what you think of that. And if you are a modder and if you have any tips for me or tips for anybody else looking to get into it, always love to see some comments down below and continue the conversation down there. I'm very new into watch modding, but it is an aspect of the hobby that I'm starting to enjoy. And I think it has a lot of potential for both, again, being able to maintain your own watches and being able to customize things to your liking. That will wrap it up for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.